When you are anxious or worried, what do you do? Think about it for a moment. When you're angry or upset or you get down and depressed, how do you cope? When the future, right, your future feels uncertain and you don't know what to do, what then? I'm honestly asking. This is going to be an interactive sermon. I'm interested because I'm guessing that many of us might actually be able to speak from experience. Stay busy. Stay busy. Okay? Stay busy. What else? Pray. Talk to somebody. Sleep. Okay, what else? Go to bed. Sleep. Go for a walk. All right, so thank you for sharing some of these answers because I think all of us probably have something healthy, I hope, that we can do, right? Maybe some of us go for a walk. Maybe some of us go for a run, or some of y'all work out, right? Some of y'all lift maybe. Or maybe you read, maybe you write, maybe you journal, maybe you watch a movie or TV show. Some of you might cook, right? How many people enjoy cooking or baking, right? As a way to stay busy, right? Maybe anybody here organize or clean or like declutter to decompress? Anybody? I know there's a couple. There's somebody. I like organize, and then it's like organized chaos. Yeah. Anyone like to reset or renew by going outdoors? I know there's one family already been for a hike this morning on Mother's Day. That's amazing. You go for a walk outdoors, or maybe you enjoy bird watching, or how many people enjoy time on the water, right? Canoeing or boating, swimming. All right, there's a few. I think all of us certainly need something that we can do to stay busy when we face times of challenge, times of uncertainty, times like these in which we need to reset, we need to reassess, we need to reorient ourselves. So today we're going to consider what Jesus' disciples did when they too were feeling overwhelmed and uncertain. And we'll consider what God had in store for them and what God has in store for us. Good morning again. I'm Pastor Jess Horsley. I'm the site pastor for our Riverside United site, and I'm one of the associates here. I am grateful that you are worshiping here in this space and place or online, wherever you might be. It's been 3 weeks since Easter. Seems longer, right? 3 weeks in this season of Eastertide in which we have been reflecting upon when and where and why Jesus shows up in those first days and weeks after his death and his resurrection. And this morning we are continuing our sermon series, When the Church Gets It Right, which means by default we are acknowledging with grief and humility that the church, the capital C church, has not always gotten it right, has gotten it wrong. We know that there have been times that the church has failed to act and speak and live and love like Christ. We must admit this. Too often, for too long, too many people have experienced the church in negative ways. The church that is not loving or peaceful or patient or kind or faithful or generous. For far too long, for far too many people, the capital C church has too often been a place of exclusion or hypocrisy or being hypocritical, or maybe even causing trauma or seeking control, or even hatred and violence. This is who the capital C church has been to some people. And we know that is not who Christ is, who Christ calls us to be. When the church gets it right, we live and love and act and speak like Christ. We cast a vision, the church casts a vision for transformation, to invite everyone into full life. a life of love and peace and patience and kindness and faithfulness and generosity. And these past 2 weeks, Pastor Evie has explored this theme for us of how we can cast a vision, the church can cast a vision of hope and reconciliation. This is, after all, what Christ is all about, and who we, as the church, the body of Christ, alive and at work in the world today, that's who we are called to be. We're called to be a positive influence in God's creation for those who are in and a part of God's creation. I like to say, I grew up in the 80s, and I like to say we're called to be transformers. Some of y'all got that. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Speaking of my people now. We're called to be transformers here and now in the world. And this is where our challenge begins, because when the future seems uncertain and making a difference here and now, it can feel difficult, if not impossible. How do we transform a world when we are anxious and when we are worried, when we're angry or upset, or we are down and depressed, when we don't know what to do or where to go? How can we truly make an impact? And it's a great question. It's a question that has been asked countless times throughout history, even by Jesus' first disciples. They too felt this same way. They wondered what to do and where to go after Jesus' death and resurrection. Here we pick up in the Gospel of John in chapter 21, hear these words. Jesus later appeared to his disciples along the shore of Lake Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee. Simon Peter and Thomas the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, and the brothers James and John were there together with 2 other disciples. Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." The others said, "We will go with you." And they went out in their boat, but they didn't catch a thing that night. Early the next morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize who he was. And Jesus shouted, "Friends, have you caught anything?" "No," they answered. So Jesus told them, "Let your nets down on the right side of the boat, and you will catch some fish." And they did, and the net was so full of fish that they could not drag it up into the boat. And Jesus' favorite disciple, that's John. It's always John, right? John tells Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Simon heard it was the Lord, he put on the clothes he had taken off while he was working. And then Peter jumped into the water, and the boat was only about 100 meters from shore. So the other disciples stayed in the boat, and they dragged in the net full of fish. When the disciples got out of the boat, they saw some bread and a charcoal fire with fish on it. And Jesus told his disciples, "Bring some of the fish that you just caught. Come and eat." None of the disciples dared ask who he was. They knew he was the Lord. And Jesus took the bread in his hands and he gave some to his disciples. And he did this the same with the fish. And this was the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from death. Now, there is a lot going on here, so we're going to break it down together. First, where are we? Where does Scripture say we are? Sea of Galilee, Lake Tiberias. It's known by multiple things. The specific town where they're staying isn't mentioned, right? They're on the lake fishing. But we can safely assume Capernaum is this small fishing village that Simon Peter called home. Capernaum is where Jesus would have often lived and stayed during his 3 years of public ministry. So Capernaum was considered, it was known by the disciples. They were known there. It was considered a safe place for them, a place they belonged. It's important to note, too, that the Sea of Galilee and Capernaum, they're 100 or so miles north of Jerusalem. So that's at least a 4 or 5 day walk. This means, right, it's been at least a week since Jesus' death and resurrection, and at least 5 days since Jesus first revealed himself to the disciples. If you remember in Pastor Evie's first sermon in this series, the disciples had locked themselves behind closed doors in a room in Jerusalem, hiding from the authorities, and Jesus appears to them. So this is at least 4 or 5 days after this. And they're in the Galilee, right? Which disciples are there? This is the interactive part, y'all. Okay, we got Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, James, John, two others. You can just name out Bartholomew maybe. I don't know. I always like Bartholomew. Bart doesn't get enough attention. Who knows? So at least half of the dozen disciples are there, right? What are they doing? Fishing. They're fishing. So we know Jesus has no specific instructions, right? After Jesus had met at least twice before this, but there are no specific instructions about what to do after Jesus' death and resurrection, right? And so what are these disciples? What have they decided to do? Go home and what? Fish. Whew, I love that. They go home and they go fish. There's a lot of worse things they could do, right? But I mean, think about it for a second. Just over a week before, their friend and teacher, their master, the Messiah, was violently tortured and killed on a cross. I think we sometimes don't realize the timeline here, what's happening in context, right? Their friend and teacher had been killed on a cross by the government, and these men were afraid. They are still afraid. They are traumatized, certainly. They are defeated. Their movement, right, this new way of being has been destroyed, or so they believe, so they think. They're unsure what to do or where to go. And everything about their lives is uncertain. Everything. And then we hear the women discover this empty tomb, and Jesus shows up behind these locked doors and gives them this vision of hope. He is alive. People have seen him. And then he appears again on the road to Emmaus, right? And he challenges and encourages the disciples. He breaks bread with them. He gives them this vision of reconciliation. But what now? What now? What's next? Because I don't know about you, but in times of uncertainty and times in which we don't know what to do or where to go, it is human nature to revert to what we know well, what we know best. And sometimes those things can be good, and sometimes those things can be unhealthy, right? We need to remember that these disciples, they know the Sea of Galilee. They know fishing. That's why I asked at the beginning of the sermon, what are the things that you do when you're feeling down and out, or when you're feeling like you don't know what to do? Because those are the things often that we do when we feel overwhelmed. Those habits or practices, those things that we know well and best. I grew up and I've said this before, but I grew up in rural Northwest Iowa, and I don't know about you, but where I grew up, fishing was and still is for many people a way of life. I remember as a kid watching people constantly spend time with rod and reel in hand, no matter the circumstances, right? You got suspended from school, going fishing, right? You got laid off from your job, going fishing. You got a new job, going fishing, right? Bad health diagnoses, going fishing. Good news from the doctor, going fishing. You got married, going fishing. Got divorced, going fishing. Someone passed away, going fishing. Some new baby was born, we're going fishing with the baby. I didn't share it. I got a picture. My parents, I was 2 weeks old, my parents had me in a boat. That is irresponsible. There is no life jacket that fits a 2-week-old. But I love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. Right? It always seemed like somebody was fishing, that fishing was the answer for most of life's problems. Or maybe that fishing was the experience. Maybe fishing was the experience that actually affirmed all other experiences, right? That tied the rest of life together. Maybe you've seen that bumper sticker or a sign that says, a bad day fishing is better than a good day at work. And I don't even like fishing anymore, and it's true. And I'm a pastor, y'all. That's really bad. I should not have said that in front of the congregation. My younger brother is a conservationist in Northwest Iowa, and my parents live on a lake now, and so most weeks in our family chat, my brother and my dad and my 2 nephews are just constantly posting photos of themselves and all the fish that they're catching. If it was called catching, I would participate more, right? I don't know about you, but it's fishing. It's not catching. I fish when I go. When they go, they catch. Different experiences, right? But it's like any experience, it's not just a habit, it takes practice, and when you do it often and well, you learn how to do it often and well. It becomes a way of life. And for the first disciples, for Jesus' first followers, it was a way of life. We cannot forget that this passage in John chapter 21, it reflects very much so the first encounter that Simon Peter and his brother Andrew and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, they have with Jesus in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 5, right? The stories are nearly identical. Simon and Andrew and James and John are called by Christ after Jesus is preaching in Simon's boat. And he says, throw your nets off to the side and you will catch fish. And Simon Peter says, well, we've been fishing all night, but if you say so, and Simon Peter shows a little bit of faith in this man who's preaching on the seashore and hauls in so many fish that it cannot imagine the catch. And now 3 years later, Simon Peter and the disciples are back here once again. They're back here fishing as if they've never left, but they did leave. The disciples chose to follow Jesus. They left and they followed him, and they experienced life with Jesus. They watched as he performed miracles. Water turned to wine, and people healed, and crowds fed. A storm calmed. Even the dead resurrected, brought back to life. And they themselves had performed miracles while traveling the countryside, while going from village to city and farmsteads to fields and waterways to wells. They watched as each other, as they healed the sick and they fed the hungry. They transformed people's lives, including their own, especially their own. And now, here they were back where it started, back where it all began, back doing the same thing that they always used to do. There's an important lesson to be learned here. I think it's a lesson that we too often fail to grasp. It's okay. It's okay for us to return to what we know, to what we used to do, to where we've been before. It's okay to go to where we're from. It's all right to go back to where we started, to find comfort and peace, right? To reset, to reassess, to reorient ourselves in times of uncertainty. But we cannot stay there. We can't. Jesus will not allow it. See, John chapter 21, it continues like this. When Jesus and his disciples had finished eating, he asked Simon, son of John, do you love me more than the others do? And Simon Peter answered, yes, Lord, you know I do. Then feed my lambs, Jesus said. And Jesus asked a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus told him. And Jesus asked a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him 3 times if he loved him. And so he told Jesus, Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. And Jesus replied, feed my sheep. This passage in the Gospels is often called Jesus restores Simon Peter. And we can't forget that it was Peter at the Last Supper who told Jesus, even to death, I'll never deny you. Only to do just that hours later. Peter, called Peter the Rock, would deny Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed the night of Jesus' arrest. And there's no doubt that this denial, it impacted Peter in his life, his very being, his identity. Maybe you can imagine the guilt or the shame. And yet, Jesus never mentions either guilt or shame ever to anyone, including Peter here. That's not who Jesus is. Rather, Jesus asks a simple question. Do you love me? Jesus asks this simple question 3 separate times. Why 3 times? He denied him 3 times. Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, needs to be restored by Jesus 3 times. And so Jesus asks him to remind him that he is well and truly forgiven, that he is well and truly worthy, that he is well and truly loved. How many times has the church failed to do this? How many times have we, the church, failed to restore broken relationships? How many times has the church failed to truly model forgiveness as well as humility, to extend an invitation rather than a rejection, to welcome those who are hurt and hurting that they might find healing and hope and a future? See, when the church gets it wrong, we think that we are right and we have all the answers. When we get it right, when the church gets it right, we are the perfect place for imperfect people. And whether we will admit it or not, that is each and every one of us. So with this question, the simple question asked 3 times, Jesus reminds Peter of the depth of his conviction and his grace and his hope and his future. And I think it's worth noting too that Jesus isn't really asking a simple question, is he? When someone asks you if you love them, if someone says like, do you love me? And you do, you really do love them and you mean it, is it enough to simply say yes? Yes, we're good. It's exactly how it works, right? Our answer to this question, it can't ever be only with words. We can never truly show or share love only ever with words. That is not love. Showing and sharing love, it requires action, it requires commitment, it requires time and attention, it requires relationship building, right? That's what love is about, emotional and mental connection and growth and generosity and sacrifice and practice. Ugh. But it does, right? Love requires practice. Love takes practice that will, for those who seek to stay in love, remain in love, grow in love, it's practice that never ends. This is Christ's vision for how we, the church, get it right. This is how we, the church, make an impact in the world with our love in action, in commitment, in time and attention, in relationship building, in emotional and mental connection and growth and generosity and sacrifice and practice, right? Love takes practice. And with these 3 questions, Jesus restores Peter and invites all the disciples, and even 2,000 years later, Jesus invites all of us, you and me and each and every one of us, into this experience to make an impact. It's worth asking this question too. What's Jesus' response? How does Jesus reply to Simon? Feed my lambs, feed my sheep, take care of my sheep, right? Here, Jesus confirms his vision for what impact really looks like. Feed my lambs. Foster and care for the young, both in age and in faith. Instruct them and correct them as they learn and grow. Dr. John Trainer once said, children are not a distraction from more important work. Children are the most important work. Some of y'all moms know this. Frederick Douglass reminds us that it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. And when the church gets it right, we are a part of the healing and repairing of that which is broken, including each other. This is what it means to care for the sheep, to take care of the sheep, to feed my sheep. When we acknowledge that we are hurt and we encourage each other in our healing, when we affirm each other in hope, when we challenge each other to grow and correct each other with love, this is how we are fed. This is how we receive. This is how we grow and mature together. And what does that impact? What does that look like here at Plattwoods Church, at Riverside United? Let me give you a list. All right, serving at Hillcrest, Platte County, like some of you all did yesterday, helping people find affordable clothing, or maybe serving at Lazarus Table, helping people get fed, serving at Dell Lamb, helping people make the house that they're in a true home, a place where they can feel like they belong. And the impact is maybe to sort or distribute food to those in need, like those who serve in our food pantries at Speak or at Mimi's Pantry, or perhaps it's serving communion or leading worship at Wexford or Riverside Nursing and Rehab Center. The impact might be leading or hosting or attending a Sunday school class or a Bible study or a small group or a grow group. The impact is inviting someone who needs a listening ear to join you at Fiddy's Coffee or at Corner Cafe on a Monday night. Maybe it's going to the gym because someone needs a workout partner, or going on a hike when someone is new to nature walks. Maybe it's something as simple as on a Tuesday night going with a bunch of guys to a late night movie and reminding each other that there's somebody who wants to listen. Even the people who say they don't believe in God, maybe they just need to know they're not alone, that we are doing this life together. Someone is in it with you. American author and poet Albert Pike once wrote, "What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us, but what we have done for others and the world remains and is immortal." See, it's okay for us to return to where we've been. It's okay for us to go back to where we once were. But we can't stay there. We can't stay where we were because we are no longer who we were. If you've been following Jesus, you will never again be who you were. Because once you know Christ, once you have been fed and you have been cared for, you are transformed. Right? You have been impacted by this love, this Christ, by the church, and you can't help but want to invite others to be a part of that impact too. Will you please pray with me? God of the hurt and the healing, we, your church, have too often been distracted by being right rather than loving well. Too often we have neglected your sheep and hurt those that need care and healing most. Too often we've grown comfortable rather than compassionate. Forgive us. Free us to impact the world with action and grace. Throw open the doors of our hearts that we might welcome not only you, but all you love. I invite you now to turn to someone near you and say, in the name of Christ, broken and beloved, you are forgiven.